The Logos Doctrine by Stanley v. LaDow, read by Dave Marsland of Cardiff Theosophical Society. Many of us believe that in every cycle some aspects of the wisdom religion are made manifest to the outer world, and that the present Theosophical movement represents such an unfolding of inner truth. But it is so difficult, when one is in the midst of being changed, to reflect at all on that into which one is being changed. Indeed, we cannot be expected to have a definite idea of the goal which the law has set for us, because how can we know that which we have not seen? We can help the law, however, to guide us to our appointed ends. If we sense a direction in which we are going, if we anticipate a little today what might be expected of us tomorrow, if we see ahead to the next bend in the stream, we may find much help in our effort to cooperate with the law if we study the modes of revelation of the wisdom religion in the past. For, though the content of one revelation may differ from another, the purpose underlying all revelations is one and the same, expressing itself ever more fully according to a rhythmic law. Every successive manifestation of the Logos from this point of view is only a clearer manifestation of what has already been. The history of the Logos doctrine, as modified by Greek philosophy and by the life of Christ, is the history of an older theosophical movement which realized its purpose and, so far as could be, was complete. Can that history cast any light on the meanings latent in the present movement, still so far from complete? Heraclitus of Ephesus, 576 to 480 BCE, seems to have been the first to use the Greek word logos to denote the word or mind of God. The idea which he thus expressed came to him most probably from the Egyptian lodge. But whether he knew the fuller implications of the Logos doctrine or not, Heraclitus limited severely his public revelation of it. The Greeks of his time needed a moral and intellectual control, and to the redoubtable task of supplying this, the early sages set themselves. That age, so different outwardly from the modern world, was not so different inwardly as one might imagine. Religion had ceased to operate as a check on men's passions, for what sanction could self-control find from the gods of Olympus? The Greeks were developing physically and mentally, but deteriorating morally. Addressing the intellects of their hearers, the sages informed them of a law above gods and men, which judged the activities of all creatures and ruled supreme, giving to all things their dues. From this law proceeded the creation, order, processes and death of the world, both in its entirety and in its minutest part. The study of the law in relation to things was called physics. In relation to men's actions, that study was called ethics, and the law itself was named nemesis. It appears that there was an increasing consciousness of the reality of the all-controlling law during that time, and that this consciousness took one form in the adoration of the beautiful. It was through the love of form and beauty that a mould was prepared to receive a new revelation and a new appeal. Pythagoras and Plato showed, behind the mortal and imperfect forms of earthly beauty, a world of immortal and absolute loveliness. The effort of man to realize the beautiful on earth was in reality the effort of the soul to disentangle itself from the matter of illusion and to return to the real world from which it had fallen in the beginning. Thus, to the aspect of the law which the first sages had revealed as pertaining to the Logos was added the aspect of beauty, of perfection, as of the model to which the universe of souls should conform. But was there any possible reconciliation between the two aspects? Is the nature of things one with their proper goal? Does providence exist? It is the contribution of Philo Judaeus, 20 BCE to 54 CE, that he answered those questions affirmatively and more clearly than his predecessors, so that, when Paul undertook to illumine the life of Christ, he found an adequate intellectual atmosphere prepared for him. Philo said that life was the reconciling term, that the Logos was not merely the impersonal law and model for life, but was itself alive in the souls of all beings. By aspiration, the soul could set in movement all the force of the law to bring it to realize the ideal set for it high in the heavens. Nay, more, the law itself existed only to awaken in the soul that aspiration which is the birth into the greater life. Christ the Master lived what Philo taught. The Logos made itself manifest at last, not through philosophy or art or science, but through a living man, born mortal and imperfect, who achieved immortality and perfection. But the early Christians lost sight too soon of this crown of the doctrine, that above all other attributes it was a life. The sophistries of the dying Greco-Roman world were too contagious. Theologians turned to the intellectual background and lost sight of the central figure of the living Master standing before them. Thus, instead of subjecting the intellect to the life, they enthroned the intellect and denied the life. They made the fundamental error of trying to separate the foundation stones of the temple from the temple itself, with the result that at last the whole building fell upon their heads. Once more, divine hands are helping to rebuild the temple. They must use the same stones, the minds and souls of men. But what is of the greatest significance in the present connection, they are placing the stones, I think, one upon another in the same order as of old. To a world whose religion had become stale and whose intellectual power was in unchecked momentum, the Lodge, through the Theosophical Society, offered a philosophy teaching the omnipresence of a spiritual law supreme above all the laws of nature and operative in the human or moral sphere quite as surely as in the physical. The clouds were lifted long enough from the divine reality above and around us for to glimpse a little of the splendour and power of the Masters, the models which human souls are destined to become. The way to realise that destiny has been shown through the life of devotion and aspiration and love. Success or failure rests with us. We must not allow the intellectual mise-en-scène to fascinate us, for all this exists only to help us learn to live the life of discipleship. When once more an avatar will fulfill his mission amongst men, let it not be said of him that his work had to be done by him all alone. Let us commence to work for him now.